Have you ever bought art supplies that are still sitting in the corner, untouched, because every time you look at them, you feel this wave of anxiety? Or maybe you scroll through social media, see someone painting these gorgeous watercolors, and immediately think, I could never do that. Not because you do not want to, but because the idea of making that first brushstroke feels absolutely terrifying. Here is what nobody tells you. A 2022 study from Stanford University found that 67% of adults completely avoid creative hobbies, not because they lack talent, but because they are paralyzed by the fear of not being perfect immediately. Think about that. 2 out of 3 people are denying themselves joy because of a fear that lives entirely in their heads. But what if I told you there is an 800-year-old Japanese art form that was literally created to obliterate that fear? What if the entire point was never about being perfect, but about learning to move your hand before your brain can stop you? The technique is called Sumi-e. In Japanese, it is written as mohui, which directly translates to ink picture. But here is the thing, the translation barely scratches the surface. Sumi-e is not really about making pretty paintings. It is about training your mind to take action without your inner critic hijacking the process. For 800 years, Zen monks in Japan used this practice as meditation, and they figured out something that modern neuroscience is only now catching up to. Your brain does not learn courage by thinking about it. Your brain learns courage by doing the scary thing and surviving it. I am Dr. Hannah. I have been a relationship coach for 22 years, and honestly, most of my work is not just about fixing relationships with other people. It is about fixing your relationship with yourself. That is why I spend so much time researching Japanese self-care methods, because they get something that Western culture often misses. They understand that how you treat yourself in private determines everything else. Today, I want to show you how a simple brush technique from 800 years ago can completely rewire how you deal with failure, perfectionism, and that voice in your head that says you are not good enough. The ancient Japanese knew something we have completely forgotten. The first stroke does not need to be perfect. It just needs to happen. Let me ask you this. What is one creative project you have been putting off because you are waiting to feel ready? Drop it in the comments below, because by the end of this video, you are going to understand why waiting is the very thing keeping you stuck. Science is now proving what Zen masters knew centuries ago. The act of beginning, even imperfectly, changes your brain in ways that no amount of preparation ever will. Let me show you how. Sumi-e came to Japan in the 13th century. Zen monks were traveling back from China, and they brought this ink painting technique with them. But something interesting happened when it landed in Japan. It stopped being just art and became something closer to spiritual training. The name Sumi-e literally means ink picture, but in the world of Zen philosophy, it represents something called mushin, which translates to no mind. This is that state where your hand just moves. No overthinking, no second guessing, no voice in your head saying, wait, maybe I should plan this more. Just action. The monks were not trying to become professional artists. They were training their minds to be decisive. In Zen, there is this beautiful concept called Ichigo Ichi. One time, one meeting. Every moment is completely unique and will never come again. In Sumi-e, every brushstroke is the same. You make it, and it is permanent. You cannot erase it. You cannot take it back. You can only make the next stroke. For beginners, this is absolutely terrifying. For people who understand what it is teaching, it is freedom. Let me paint you a picture of how this actually works. You dip your brush in ink, you hold it over the paper, and then, without spending 20 minutes planning in your head, without sketching it out first, without Googling how to paint perfectly, you just make a stroke, one stroke, and the second that ink touches the paper, it is done. There is no undo button. There is no, let me just erase that. The stroke exists now, and your only choice is what you do next. The whole philosophy behind Sumi-e is rooted in something called wabi-sabi. this Japanese idea that beauty lives in imperfection, in things that are impermanent and incomplete. A Sumi-e painting is not trying to look like a photograph. It is trying to capture the soul of something using as few strokes as possible. A bamboo stalk might be 3 lines. A mountain might be 5. The goal is not adding more detail. The goal is being completely present for the few marks you do make. This is why Sumi-e works. It removes your ability to overthink because overthinking takes time, and in Sumi-e, you do not have time. The ink is wet, the brush is loaded. If you hesitate, the ink will bleed, the line will blur, and the moment will be lost. So you learn, stroke by stroke, to trust your instinct over your inner critic. You learn that the imperfect line you made is not a failure. It is just the line you made. And now you make the next one. The ancient masters understood this. They would spend years practicing single strokes, not to make them perfect, but to make them immediate, to train the hand to move before the mind could interfere with doubt. Now, let me show you why this actually works, because the science behind this is fascinating. There was a study in 2021 at Harvard Medical School led by Dr. Jocelyn C., and they wanted to know what happens in your brain when you do art that cannot be erased versus art where you can just hit undo. They had people practice Sumi-e, where every stroke is permanent, and then they scanned their brains. What they found was wild. The part of your brain called the anterior cingulate cortex, which is basically your internal error detector, your inner critic that constantly scans for mistakes, that part quieted down by 43%, just from practicing an art form where you cannot take anything back. But here's the really interesting part. After just 4 weeks of doing Sumi-e for 15 minutes a day, people got 61% faster at starting other tasks in their lives, tasks that had nothing to do with painting. The courage you build making one permanent brushstroke actually teaches your brain to start that difficult email, or that workout, or that conversation you have been avoiding. The bravery transfers. Your brain is not trying to sabotage you when it makes you freeze before starting something new. It is literally just trying to keep you safe. The prefrontal cortex, the part that handles planning and decision-making, has one mission: do not let anything bad happen. And in your brain's ancient wiring, anything unfamiliar equals potentially dangerous. So when you think about starting that painting or launching that side business or having that hard conversation, your prefrontal cortex floods you with questions. What if it is terrible? What if people laugh? What if you waste time and money? These thoughts are not you being weak. This is your brain doing exactly what evolution designed it to do. But Sumi-e works around that entire system. Dr. Andrew Huberman from Stanford has done incredible research on this. He explains that your motor cortex, the part that controls physical movement, works faster than your thinking brain. When you physically move your hand and make that stroke, your body overrides your planning system. This is exactly why Zen masters were obsessed with immediate action. They knew that thinking about the stroke brings up fear. Making the stroke brings up learning. There was another study in 2023 from the University of Tokyo that confirmed something really counterintuitive. They had people do creative tasks, but split them into 2 groups. One group did things like Sumi-e or clay sculpting, where you cannot undo what you make. The other group did digital drawing, where they had an undo button. You would think the people who could erase their mistakes would be less stressed, right? Wrong. The people doing the permanent tasks actually had lower cortisol levels, lower stress. The permanence did not increase their anxiety. It eliminated their decision fatigue. They were not constantly asking themselves, is this good enough to keep? The mark existed. The only question left was, what do I do next? This is why Sumi-e is so brilliant. It does not teach you to be perfect. It teaches you to be decisive. It does not help you avoid mistakes. It shows you that mistakes are just marks on paper, and marks are just information. And most importantly, it proves to your nervous system over and over again that you can survive being imperfect. Okay, so how do you actually do this? How do you take something Zen monks practiced 800 years ago and use it to fix your relationship with fear and perfectionism. Today, let me give you a roadmap that actually works. Week 1 is all about taking the pressure off. You are not trying to paint anything that looks like anything. You are just learning what commitment feels like. Grab a brush, some ink, and paper. Honestly, any kind works, but traditional Sumi-e uses a bamboo brush and rice paper because the ink soaks in immediately. No takebacks. Spend 10 minutes a day just making strokes, vertical lines, horizontal lines, circles. Do not judge them. Do not compare them to anything. Just make them. Your only job this week is to feel what it is like to put ink on paper, knowing you cannot erase it. And here is where most people mess this up. They want to skip ahead and start painting bamboo or mountains right away. But if you do that, you are just bringing your perfectionism along for the ride. The whole point of week 1 is to separate making a mark from making something good. You are literally training your hand to move before your brain can jump in and stop you. Week 2 is about connecting your breath to your movement. In traditional Sumi, every single stroke is tied to your breathing. You breathe in, you load the brush with ink. You breathe out, you make the stroke. This is not just some poetic ritual. It is actual neuroscience. A study from the University of Pennsylvania in 2019 found that when you sync your breathing with your movement, you activate your parasympathetic nervous system, which is your body's calm down mechanism. When you exhale as you make a stroke, you are literally telling your body this action is safe while you are doing the thing that scares you. Over time, your brain starts to link creative action with safety instead of threat. This week, paint simple shapes with your breath. One breath in, one breath out, one stroke. A leaf, a rock, a single blade of grass. Stop trying to make it look like something real. Just try to make it with total commitment in one exhale. Week 3 is where things get interesting. You are going to learn about composition, but not in the way art school teaches it. In Sumi-e, there is this concept called yohaku no bi, which means the beauty of empty space. A traditional Sumi-e painting is like 70% blank paper. The empty space is not laziness or unfinished work. It is intentional. It is what gives the few strokes you do make room to breathe and actually mean something. This week, paint your first real composition. Pick something simple like a branch, a bird, a hill. But here is the catch. You only get 5 strokes, not 6, not 10. 5. This limitation forces your brain to make real choices. What actually matters? What can you suggest with a line instead of spelling out with detail? This is the mental shift that changes everything. You stop trying to include everything and start learning how to say more with less. And honestly, apply this to your actual life. In your career, what is the one email that actually needs to be sent instead of drowning in a to-do list of 47 things? For your health, what is the one meal you can improve today instead of trying to overhaul your entire life overnight? Sumi teaches you that real impact does not come from doing more stuff. It comes from doing less with your full attention. Week 4 is about speed and trusting yourself. By now, you have practiced individual strokes. You have practiced breathing with your movement. You have practiced making choices about what matters. Now, you practice not thinking at all. Set a timer for 5 minutes. Paint 3 different things. You do not have time to overthink. You do not have time to plan every detail. You only have time to move. This is what Zen calls ken no sen, taking action before your mind can jump in and sabotage you. You are going to be shocked at what comes out when you do not give yourself time to doubt. You might also make something you absolutely hate, and that is completely the point. You are not training yourself to make masterpieces. You are training yourself to create without needing it to be a masterpiece. You are showing your nervous system in real time that you can take action, look at the result, and take more action without falling apart. This is not about becoming more productive. This is about learning to trust yourself again. every time you make a stroke and do not erase it, you are sending your nervous system a message. I can handle this not being perfect. I can handle uncertainty. I can handle things not going exactly how I planned. And when you repeat that message enough times, it changes everything about how you move through your life. A 2022 study from Kyoto University tracked people who practiced Sumi-e for 8 weeks. At the end, 58% of them reported feeling way more confident creatively, and 49% said they stopped procrastinating as much. The reason is simple. Sumi-e drills into you that starting matters more than succeeding, and once you truly believe that you do not need certainty before you start something, you stop waiting around for certainty that is never coming. But the real transformation goes deeper than just painting. Sumi-e changes how you see failure itself. In Zen, there is this idea called Shoshin, beginner's mind. It is the practice of approaching every single moment like it is your first time, with curiosity instead of judgment, without dragging all your past mistakes into today. When you practice Sumi-e, you are practicing exactly that. Every blank page is a fresh start. Every stroke is a first stroke. You are not carrying the weight of yesterday's attempts. You are not comparing today's painting to last week's. You are just here, right now, with a brush and a choice to make. This is what the ancient tea ceremony masters meant when they said, Ichi-go, Ichi-e. This moment will never happen again. This stroke will never come again. So give it your full attention, and then let it go. When you bring this way of thinking into the rest of your life, everything shifts. That conversation you have been avoiding for 6 months, it is just one stroke. That business idea you have been overthinking into the ground, it is just one stroke. That workout you keep putting off until you feel motivated, it is just one stroke. You do not need to see the entire painting before you start. You just need to make the first mark and see what happens next. The research backs this up. Oxford University did a study in 2023 where they tracked people who did low-stakes creative stuff like journaling, doodling, or Sumi-e. After a few months, these people reported being 41% more satisfied with their lives overall compared to people who did not do any of that. And it was not because their lives got objectively better. Their jobs did not change. Their relationships did not magically fix themselves. What changed was that they stopped sitting around waiting for permission to actually live their lives. You do not need to feel motivated to pick up the brush. You do not need to feel ready. You do not need to feel confident. You just need to dip the brush in the ink and make the stroke. Motivation shows up after you start moving. Confidence shows up after you have proof. And proof only comes when you do the thing you are scared to do and realize you survived it. The ancient Japanese figured out what we have completely forgotten in modern culture. Perfection was never the point. Being present is the point. Mastery is not about never making mistakes. It is about being willing to make them, look at them, learn from them, and make the next stroke anyway. So here is what I want you to do. Get yourself a brush, get some ink, get a piece of paper, and make one stroke. Do not plan it out. Do not sketch it first. Just make it, and then make another one, and then one more. If this video hit home for you, if you are someone who has been waiting to feel ready before you start creating or trying or living, hit subscribe. I am here every week sharing tools like this to help you grow, heal, and actually take action. This is not just about art. This is about everything. Sumi-e teaches us something so simple, it is almost stupid. The blank page is not your enemy. It is your invitation. The imperfect stroke is not your failure. It is your proof that you had the guts to begin one stroke, then another,